Coming up on Tech News Today, T-Mobile's plans to conquer. Is a cheap iPhone finally in the cards? And 3D, dead in all dimensions. All that more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, January 9th, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com, use offer code TNT1, and they recently launched a developer platform for complete code control. And by Pond5, the world's stock media marketplace. If you're a media maker looking for video, photos, illustrations, music, sound effects, After Effects templates, or 3D models, check out Pond5. And for an exclusive 50 free stock media files, go to pond5.com/TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world. I'm still not in my new studio yet, so it's a little echoey because I've unpacked some of the boxes. But we're going to start the day with the top 12 stories in the news fuse. That's a crazy news fuse intro, and it goes along with T-Mobile USA CEO John Legere, who said lots of crazy things at CES. He's called AT&T crap. He warned that Verizon's share everything plans will be bad for people who want to watch porn on their phones. However, in more reasonable comments to Reuters, Legere says T-Mobile hopes to bring the iPhone 5 to T-Mobile within 3 to 4 months and end subsidies for phones, thus lowering monthly plan costs in about the same time frame.
Speaking of iPhones, is Apple developing a low-cost version of the iPhone? A rumor that started at Digitimes has kind of weaseled its way into a much more credible Wall Street Journal article. The journal's sources say that Apple could launch a cheaper iPhone, marketed possibly at the developing world, as early as the end of this year. We've heard rumors like this before, but there is one new detail, that the cheaper iPhone would have a plastic shell made of polycarbonate plastic.
Most of the world will say goodbye to Microsoft Messenger on March 15th because that's the date the service will be shut down everywhere except mainland China. Microsoft announced it was retiring Messenger in favor of Skype back in November. Current Messenger users will be migrated over to Skype.
The New York Times reports security researchers investigating a recent string of attacks on banking networks in the United States found a sophisticated hack of data centers was used, and some researchers, as well as the U.S. government, believe the skill required for such an attack indicates a government-backed operation. And, of course, the most popular suspect is Iran.
Google has filed with the U.S. International Trade Commission to terminate its efforts to stop Microsoft from using video compression technology on the Xbox. Microsoft wants to license 2 standards essential patents for H.264 that come from Motorola, which Google now owns. The Federal Trade Commission's latest consent order states Google has to license patents using standards to willing parties, and in this case, that willing party is Microsoft.
Samsung and Dropbox are teaming up again. If you get a flagship Samsung phone, you'll get 50 gigabytes of Dropbox storage for 2 years at no cost. Dropbox is currently on the S3, the Note 2, and the Galaxy Camera. The new deal will bring Dropbox to the Galaxy Grand and smart cameras. Dropbox will also be available on Samsung smart TVs via Samsung's All-Share Play app.
San Antonio High School student Andrea Hernandez claimed her student identification violated her religion, partially because it was implanted with an RFID chip, a radio frequency identification chip, and she was suspended because she wouldn't wear the ID. Well, the San Antonio student took the case to court and lost Tuesday, challenging that suspension. The school had offered to remove the chip and only require the ID badge to be worn, but Hernandez and her family refused that too. Court ruled that requiring identification did not breach Hernandez's right of religion.
The FTC and the Justice Department together enforce U.S. antitrust law, and the former is arguing that infringement of standard essential patents, I got all the patent stories today, should be punished with monetary damages rather than bans, except in specific cases. Standard essential patents have obviously been crucial in these patent wars that companies have been tied up in since 2010. Apple and Samsung come to mind. The usual expectation among corporations has been that standard essential patents will be inexpensively licensed to anyone, but we all know it doesn't play out that way. The ITC's view may carry weight with judges, but is not binding.
Kickstarter says that 2012 was a great year as it raised nearly $320 million for projects. 2.2 million people pledged funds to those projects. Of the over 18,000 projects funded, music had the most funded projects with over 5,000. Games raised the most money at $83 million.
Hold on your Clearwire stock, folks. The sale to Sprint may not be a lock after all. Dish Network has made an unsolicited offer to buy the mobile carrier for $3.30 a share. Sprint, which is currently closing their buyout by SoftBank, had offered Clearwire $2.97 a share. Sprint claims Dish's offer is not viable.
Valve's still making news at CES despite not having any big flashy press conferences or the booth babes. Gabe Newell told The Verge that Steambox will be projects. The first, codenamed Bigfoot, focuses on the hardware for use in the home, with a TV including standards like Miracast to stream games to different screens. The second, codenamed Littlefoot, has something to do with mobile gaming. Something, anyway. Newell also describes 3 quality levels of Steambox: good, better, or best.
Panasonic's got some new tough pads, and that's its name for its ruggedized tablets. The FZG1 is a 10-inch tablet running Windows 8 Pro. If you're an Android person, there's a 7-inch model called the JTB1 that runs Ice Cream Sandwich. The larger Windows model will cost $2,900 when it launches in March. The 7-incher hits in February for $1,300.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Squarespace, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. We talk about Squarespace all the time, and you really just got to try it to experience it. You don't have to have any excuse not to try it. Go to squarespace.com, put in a name, and you're on your way. You don't have to give them a credit card. You don't have to give them a ton of information, any of that stuff. Just try it out. You'll see how fast and easy it is to use, how their beautiful templates with their 100% drag and drop functionality for all the customization tools make it easy for even a design, like, I don't want to say any kind of bad words, but somebody who's very challenged at design like me can make a good-looking website. And there's a new page builder tool called the Layout Engine that enables you to customize pages in seconds by adding blocks of content like photos, videos, text, social media content, and immediately preview the layout as you go. Check out these designs. Try out the mobile responsive designs. Make a site. Look at it on your laptop. Look at it on your phone. You'll see what we're talking about. And then if you do decide to purchase the service, you will need a credit card for that. But we'll give you an offer code. TNT1 gets you 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, whether you go monthly or annual. It's going to get you 10% off that first purchase. So go to squarespace.com, use that offer code TNT1. Everything you need to create an exceptional website. And we thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today. All right, let's bring in Nate Lanxon, editor of Wired.co.uk. Nate and Iyaz both out in Las Vegas for CES. How's CES treating you so far, Nate?
It is treating me very well. I'm a big fan of American breakfasts.
Treating your stomach well.
Yeah, it's treating my my waistband very well. No, it's good. It's good. I'm having a good time. It's the longest I've actually spent out at CES for quite a while. About 6 days or something. So it's been good. Seen some good faces, some people I haven't met before. It's going good.
I'm sorry I'm not out there this year because it'll be good to see you again, but I'm sure our paths will cross soon enough. Would it be fair to say the best thing you've seen at CES so far is pancakes?
No. The best thing I've seen so far is Big Bird and Desmond Tutu on the same stage at the opening keynote. That was just mad.
I think that is definitely the favorite moment for most of the people I've talked to is the Qualcomm keynote. That was just insane. Crazy. Well, let's talk a little bit about John Laguerre. He's saying some crazy stuff, as we mentioned in the news feed. Told Reuters, iPhone and the end of phone subsidies coming in, quote, here's the quote he said, 3 to 4 months as opposed to 6 to 9 months. So he's trying not to get in trouble with his PR department and with the product managers by putting too fine a point on it. But he's trying to say, hey, it's coming soon. We're not going to wait half a year for this. He also mentioned that he'd be interested in partnering with Dish on mobile servicing. We mentioned that Dish is making a bid on Clearwire. It's probably not going to succeed in that bid, but Dish did get approval to use frequencies to do a mobile service. So he said they'd be interesting for us to talk to, and we'd be fascinating for them. He's got some confidence, this guy. As we mentioned, he called AT&T crap. He said Verizon deserved credit for, quote, the way they covered those Dust Bowl states with LTE, I think is admirable. Talked about Joe Schmo watching porn on his phone. And he said he had suggested an ad campaign to his marketing department where he would say, I saw more honesty on a Match.com ad than in AT&T's coverage maps.
Zing. I like this guy.
He is full of zingers. But at the same time, T-Mobile rolling out $70 a month unlimited data. That's the cheapest here in the U.S. HD voice nationwide, 1900 megahertz service for fast speed compatibility with phones like the iPhone in Denver, L.A., San Diego, and Virginia Beach. Partnering with the MLB on bullpen phones. We'll talk about that a little later. And bundling in free data on laptops now. So you'll get some fast service, some high-speed wireless built in to certain laptops as part of their 4G Connect plan. Iyaz, is this mean T-Mobile's on the rise? Is it a good thing that they didn't let AT&T buy them?
I'll say T-Mobile's got a whole lot of life. I mean, it seems like their CEO is going to become the anti-Dan Hesse, right? Dan Hesse talks on Sprint, and he's always had those commercials where he's measured and he's a nice guy. But we got John Legere basically trash talking every other competitor. It's actually, I think it's a good sign for T-Mobile that their CEO is so vocal when it comes to, look, we had this whole little flirtation with AT&T. That's over. We're our own company. We're going to do some really cool things coming up. And the idea of even throwing Dish out there, just really smart, just to make sure that people realize that T-Mobile isn't dead in the water. It's not just the fake 4G brand. It's a real company.
Now, Nate, you've got a version of T-Mobile over in the UK. Do you wish that the CEO there was as brash as John Legere?
I kind of do. I wish we had the same option of unlimited data without this contract. T-Mobile actually in the UK merged with one of the other major operators. So there's kind of these three brands that now operate under the same name. But T-Mobile was always a little bit of an underdog in the UK market. And I think this could shed some light on, I guess, what they're doing these days if they came out and said some of this stuff in the UK. But that would be a lot of fun.
Sarah, I mean, obviously we're laughing at some of the stuff he's saying, but do you think that this actually helps T-Mobile's image as sort of the underdog?
I think that it puts T-Mobile, I don't know, in front of people. Yeah, I mean, it's not like, oh, you got to be a crazy CEO and say some stuff and call AT&T crap to get attention. But he's not just saying crazy stuff. I mean, I think that all of this is actually coming from an honest place. He's saying, listen, we're getting the iPhone. It's happening soon. AT&T is garbage. They've been lying to everybody for a long time about how good the network is. It's just not true. So, yeah, we're an underdog, but we're about to unveil plans that are going to be more attractive to you, and you should pay attention to us.
Yeah, I think he's probably just being himself. I think this is who the guy is. So I don't think he's faking it, but I think he's letting himself be himself maybe more than he would otherwise in order to get some attention at T-Mobile, which is exactly what they need. And I agree with you, Nate. I think the fact that they're able to put out these, $70 a month unlimited plans, get rid of phone subsidies, lower the monthly costs, is all the kinds of things you want to see from the number 4 out of 4 major competitors to kind of drive innovation in the big behemoths, to keep them from getting slow and stodgy.
Now, is that unlimited data? Is that 4G, and can you tether with it?
Yes, it is 4G. Whether that means HSPA plus or LTE depends on the market you're in. But I don't know about the tethering. That's a good question.
Because that would be incredible, because if it was 4G and you were in a 4G area and it was unlimited and untethered, like, you could use that basically for your home internet. A lot of people could anyway. You wouldn't need cable or any kind of home internet. You could just run everything through that and without a contract. That would be absolutely killer if they did that in the UK.
And then you would have money for the new low-priced iPhone that the Wall Street Journal is back to saying might be coming again soon, according to people close to the matter. Right, Sarah?
Yeah, they've got the sources, unnamed, of course. You know, yesterday I was guesting for Leo on MacBreak Weekly, and we were kicking around this Digitimes rumor because at the time of our recording yesterday, that's all it was. Digitimes is it's a Taiwanese company. Lots of iPhone rumors, Apple rumors in general, and very hit and miss. Wall Street Journal says they've got sources, though, that back up this rumor that Apple is working on a cheaper iPhone. And the idea is that it could be rolled out by the end of this year. The whole, the reason that this is not just like, hey, we've heard this already, is that there are details that it would have a less expensive body. Because the whole thing is like, if it looks like an iPhone and acts like an iPhone, how are they going to introduce a cheaper iPhone? Is it going to be bigger? Is it going to be smaller? Sounds like using a different shell that's made out of polycarbonate plastic rather than the aluminum housing that the iPhone 5 currently has would bring down the price quite a bit. Other parts could be the same. I mean, you can't do too much with the front of the iPhone, or it wouldn't look like the iPhone. But possibly some parts recycled from older iPhone models, and all of this sort of matches up with Tim Cook's in China. People understand that the Chinese market, iPhone is in high demand there, but it's extremely expensive. There are a lot, it's a huge, huge market, and possibly a really untapped market for people who just need a bit of a lower price point in order for the iPhone to compete with, the popular brands in China as well on those Android phones. And then, of course, just looking at the third quarter of 2012, worldwide, again, emerging markets that would be interested in a cheaper iPhone. Apple held 14.6% of worldwide smartphone shipments, and that's down from 23% in the fourth quarter of 2011. So it's on decline. Samsung, of course, is always, the big competitor, rose from 8.8% to 31.3% in the third quarter of 2010 to the third quarter of 2012. So when you look at worldwide phone, we're talking shipments, but it kind of translates roughly into sales. Apple is missing out on a lower price point for a large market. I mentioned China just because we talked about that yesterday, but there are many other emerging markets where this could be attractive. Then again, the Wall Street Journal has talked about this before. There's not anything super new about this except a little bit more possible details about what the iPhone would be made of. What do you guys make of this, Nate?
Yeah.
I'll start with you.
I think this is a non-story in some ways. I mean, if we think about the iPhone and the way that it's evolved, and you think about, polycarbonate shell, lower cost, probably not necessarily a retina display, things like that, does that not just sound exactly like an iPhone 3GS? I mean, for years, the iPhone 3GS stayed on sale. It was the low-end iPhone. It was free on a lot of contracts over here. I don't know if that was the same in the US. It was very, very low cost, but it still allowed people to get into the iPhone ecosystem, to buy into the apps and things like that. And I just think that whenever this story comes out, Apple's working on a cheaper iPhone, they're going to release a cheaper iPhone. It's one of the past models that they're just gearing up to sell either as free on a contract or something like that. I can't honestly believe that they are spending all their time and effort and resources on working on an entirely new model when they've basically got the tools and parts and things to use one of the old ones as as a low-cost version.
Yeah, I agree with Nate. I think this thing would actually be a mistake if they made a cheaper version of the current iPhone when they already have, two models that they sell that are cheaper and they already know how to make. I think it could make sense, though, if they made sort of a smaller iPhone akin to
a smaller
a
iPhone.
Mini. Yeah. So something that is a different
it's
design.
already the smallest phone.
Yeah.
All our phones are getting bigger. The iPhone's going to shrink.
Yeah, and the iPhone 4 and the 4S are already smaller than the iPhone 5. But sort of like an iPhone mini, the way they did the iPad mini, the way they did iPod mini, and make that a cheaper phone, because then it has a reason for being cheaper and different rather than just being like, oh, we have the same iPhone but with cheaper materials in it. I just don't see Apple doing that.
I agree. I
can see Apple doing it.
Sorry, Iyaz.
Okay, I could see Apple doing it because the current iPhone size, the iPhone 5, has got that larger display. And while they've been able to use the older models as the little, the gateway drug into iOS, they need a device that is that same size. So, and to try to bring back something as as simple as the 3GS style, but bring it back in that 4-inch display. I think it basically a larger iPod Touch, so to speak, but it's made out of a plastic body. So you can get all those components in there, and you get a lower cost phone, because Tim Cook's all about supply chains and keeping the cost down. If it costs them less money to make a new phone with that 4-inch display, as opposed to keeping 3.5-inch displays sitting around, I think that it would actually make sense for Apple to bother to do this, just so they can get people in the door for iOS.
Yeah, and I do think what Sarah said about Tim Cook being in China, needing a less expensive phone to be able to market to the Chinese carriers, carries weight into why there might be these rumors that they might be playing around with those ideas. I still like the idea of the iPhone Shuffle, too. It just calls random people for you. We have a death to declare from CES, Iyaz. This is rather sad news.
I guess it depends. There's a bunch of articles out there right now saying that 3D is officially dead. Over at The Verge, Blatzevov's got a piece that doesn't play taps, but we will play it here. He wrote how 3D is gone from CES. TV marketing is focusing on higher resolutions, curved displays, OLED, and every big TV maker at CES, this is a quote from him, every big TV maker at CES has waved a clear white flag on trying to sell 3D TV as an important feature. Then there's Troy Wolverton over at Mercury News, said the manufacturer's silence is striking because the last 4 years, it's been a focus. 3D TV has been a focus of CES. Although there's also news on Netflix. They probably don't agree with this because they just launched Super HD streaming and 3D streaming in the US only right now. It'll work on a bunch of hardware like PS3, Roku, Apple TVs, and more. It's limited to a couple of ISPs right now, Cablevision and Google Fiber only. Nate, what do you think the state of 3D is? Is it dead?
No. So I read a lot of these pieces and people talking about 3D being dead at CES. And when you're walking around, it looks like that at first glance. It looks like people aren't pushing 3D. They're not trying to get you to come to their stand. They're not necessarily handing out glasses. And, you know, Vlad's piece on The Verge was spot on in that vein. But most of these TVs do support 3D. What's changed is that the manufacturers aren't using 3D as a hook anymore. They're not trying to say, we've got the best 3D or we've got the thinnest 3D TV. 3D has just become something of a commodity feature in these new TVs. It's something that they do in the same way that they might have picture processing or they might have really high refresh rates or something, but they're not pushing it as hard as they're pushing things like OLED and higher res screens like 4K. I mean, there are a couple of TVs that have got 3D. Samsung has got one that if you're sitting next to somebody else and you're both wearing glasses, you can each see a completely different picture on the screen. And they were talking about how this was useful for people wanting to play multiplayer gaming, but without having the split screen effect. You could just wear the glasses and you could both see 3D, but you're both seeing two different images completely. So there are some 3D innovations going on here, but it's just not something they're shouting about and saying, hey, this is the next big thing. They just kind of sidelined it and said, let's talk about 4K, or if you're sharp, let's talk about 8K, because they've got one of those too.
Yeah, I think it is a marketing thing, because what we've seen is that the 3D moniker makes people roll their eyes, makes people sigh. That, why would I want that? It almost is a negative to mention that you have 3D, but that doesn't mean you take it out of the TV. You have it in there so that if somebody does get marketed a 3D Blu-ray, or if Netflix is adding 3D service, that they're like, oh, my TV does do that. Okay, that's kind of cool. But yeah, apparently touting it is like the wrong way to go. It makes people hate your TV.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And the real buzz at CES as been discussed this week is higher resolutions, not 4K. It's just been sidelined.
Sarah, content producers haven't stopped making things in 3D. Is this just a speck on a TV box that people won't notice, or like should this medium be dead?
Well, I mean, I still remember I've checked out a few 3D TVs, and actually last year at CES it was we were walking the showstoppers floor or something, and somebody had a 3D TV showing a basketball game, and I was like, that is amazing. That looks really good. Gosh, maybe it was 2 years ago now. I'm not really sure, but I mean there are use cases where you go, this is really cool. Now, has it made me upgrade my TV so that I could watch a basketball game in 3D in my living room? No, it's a novelty, and it doesn't really stick with me. But it is cool technology, and I think that there are a lot of people who think, yeah, that's an added plus. I'm just not going to, my life is not revolved around everything being in 3D, and the manufacturers realize that. If a TV is a lot more expensive because of 3D, it's going to turn off consumers, so you want it to be a feature, but not something where people say, oh, 3D TV, that's not what I want, so I'm going to go ahead and ignore you altogether. I think actually that 1080p video streaming as part of the Netflix story is the more exciting for me anyway. 3D streaming in the U.S. on an ISP that I don't have, meh. But better, a better picture. That's what I care about in 2D.
Yeah, it's funny because for me, 4K, I'm thinking that it'd be a really great 3D experience because you're going to get 2K images if it's all passive instead of the active shutters of televisions these days. You can get active or passive, but you get lower res with the passive. So I'm thinking in the next couple of years we'll see 2K 3D, which is just 4K TV. So I'll just stop with the acronyms ASAP.
We're on to 8K. We'll just skip right ahead. I keep saying right on to 8K. Let's take a quick break and thank our other sponsor for today's show, Pond 5. It doesn't matter what resolution you're making your content in, you need to have some stock footage. It's going to be necessary at some point. You're going to want a big helicopter shot or some still images of monkeys playing with penguins or some crazy thing that you just can't afford to get or can't get at all. And Pond 5 can make it happen for you at a very reasonable cost, royalty free in most cases. If you're making videos, films, apps, or other types of media, check it out. They have 10 million professional quality photos, vector illustrations, music tracks. If you're needing a music bed and you don't want to worry about copyright violations, right? Get one from Pond 5. Sound effects, customizable motion graphics templates, 3D models, and more. Plus, if you're like, I actually have video of monkeys playing with penguins. Where do I sell that? You can sell it on Pond 5. They actually give you 50% of the payout. They give you control over the pricing, and they pay out 50% royalties for each and every sale. It's a higher payout than other stock photo marketplaces. So go take a look at Pond 5. It's POND5.com, and you can get 50 free stock media files right now by going to pond5.com/TNT. If you're a media maker or artist, you should check out Pond 5. Take your creativity to the next level or upload your own content and put it to work at the world's most artist-friendly marketplace for stock media. That's pond5.com/TNT. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Onward into Twitter using human brains as part of their algorithm.
Yeah, this is very, very smart on Twitter's part, and it's probably going to make advertisers really happy. Twitter revealed what is calling the real-time human computation system. This was a blog post, a rather long and convoluted one, co-authored by a Twitter data scientist, Edward Chen, and Alpa Jain, who is a senior software engineer in the company's Revenue at Twitter group. That part is very important. Here's a quote from one of the posts. They're trying to basically lay out how it can be very confusing when there's sort of a meme that kind of goes crazy on Twitter to make sense of it. They use the example binders full of women as a hashtag that refers to politics, doesn't refer to anything in an office. And if people are searching for horses and bayonets, that might have something to do with the most recent presidential debate in the U.S. Some of you might have forgotten, but those were, two very, choice terms that were thrown out and got a lot of attention. But a machine doesn't necessarily understand that references a human event. So what's Twitter doing? Twitter has teamed up with Amazon's Mechanical Turk service. Oh, yes, Mechanical Turk. Mechanical Turk, if you're not familiar, it's been around for years, and it farms out data jobs that need human interpretation to lots of workers all over the world. Amazon calls it artificial intelligence because it's actually people, and they pay them very, very small very, very small wages to do a lot of work.
That's just intelligence if it's artificial intelligence, right?
Well, that's just what Amazon calls it. They're trying to be cutesy. But the idea is that Twitter isn't just going like, okay, well, there's some random people in some part of the world who will work for very little money. Let's just get them to start making some sense of it. Twitter has chosen a certain number of folks on Mechanical Turk to start evaluating trending search terms. So something starts trending. Well, nothing in Twitter's algorithm necessarily understands why it's trending because it's just happening so fast. You know, it's people and information gets shared and stuff is starting to rise to the top. Those people over at Mechanical Turk can make some sense of it and then tell Twitter which categories or images or video those terms relate to. And the reason that that's important is that all turns into what Twitter relies on for relevant ads. Promoted tweets, for example. If something like hashtag binders full of women is surfacing, someone on Mechanical Turk can say, oh, you know what we should do? We should use the, Barack Obama a Twitter account or White House or something like that as a promoted tweet. And then someone who's paying Twitter to get out in front of folks has a better chance of being relevant at a very specific time. Because, of course, these memes, as we know, they rise to the top and then they fall extremely rapidly. And sometimes the window is really short. Now, John Mitchell over at Read Write wrote about this and said, this is basically the death of news because if Twitter can figure this out and have on its discovery page what's actually relevant in real time based on a combination of, Twitter's API and human brains, what's the point of writing about anything unless you only write about ideas that are hard for computers to figure out? So that you have to always come from the side of what am I saying? It's sort of like opinion pieces. Editorial stuff is still okay, but just reporting the news. If Twitter can figure this out and make a lot of money doing it, then news should be worried.
I don't know. Some news stories do need to be more than 140 characters, right?
Yeah, I completely disagree with this being the death of news. I think if you're limited to a very, very small amount of information. If anything, this could be the death of the homepage. If people are finding their headlines from Twitter, but they're still clicking through and reading stories, then, all right, maybe the death of the homepage. But if that was going to happen, then, that's basically what Reddit's doing now anyway and what Dig did ages ago. But I think what's quite interesting about this story is the fact that it's focusing on sort of sorting through topics and making sure that trending topics are, accurate and relevant. But I think they need to do this for dead celebrities, because I have lost count of how many times I've seen someone on Twitter die who hasn't actually died. It happened to Megan Fox the other day. It was RIP Megan Fox was a trending topic. I was like, what, Megan Fox has died? I looked it up. No, she hadn't. It was trending because people were tweeting about, what, Megan Fox has died? Why is this trending? And I think someone needs to step in and say, guys, chill. She's fine. Move on. And that maybe is more important than any of this, in a sense, at least to me.
Yeah, but Twitter won't be able to monetize that part, will they?
No, that's also true. But I'm thinking from a very selfish perspective that I'm sick of seeing people die who aren't actually dead. Maybe I would pay to have that monitored. Maybe that's their revenue stream for that. But I do think this is a good idea. And Mechanical Turk's a really interesting way of doing it, actually, sort of outsourcing it rather than hiring people in.
Another interesting story about algorithms. Trust me on this one. Researchers think they can identify the author of anonymous posts 80% of the time. Sadia Afroz and Aylin Kaliskan Islam were speaking to an audience at 29C3 Chaos Communications Congress in Germany, describing a technique that includes something called stylometric analysis. Stylometric analysis is a much more sophisticated way of telling authorship, sort of based in the idea of frequency of words, right? But they use what's called functional words. So functional words are the words that are around the content, right? If you take out the nouns and you take out the verbs, you've got these of, from, particles. A sentence is still understandable with nonsense words in the verbs and nouns, at least somewhat. It makes some syntax sense. If you take away the functional words, it doesn't make any sense at all, no matter what the content words are. So these function words can be very specific to the writer. And they said in their presentation, even if you are writing a thesis, you'll probably use the same function words in chat messages that you use in your thesis. So even if your text is not clean, your writing style can give you away. And they tried this out. They required a minimum of 5,000 words. They had to translate all posts into English. So leet speak prevented translation. That was one way of getting around it. But 80% of the authors in their data set were identifiable without any kind of other way of identifying them just by doing this analysis. They've also developed a tool called Anonymouth, which identifies these function words which could make you identifiable and helps you change your usage of it. So they're playing both sides. They're saying, like, look, here's a tool for figuring out who people are online. Maybe that can help you identify botnets or malware authors. On the other side, though, here's a way to prevent yourself from being identified. Iyaz, what do you think of this ability to just kind of, is privacy dead when just the style of our writing gives away who we are?
I think the thing is, if you look for patterns long enough, you'll find them, especially if they're using a sample size of a minimum of 5,000 words. I mean, that's a lot of words for the most part. So I don't know if is privacy dead? I guess it could be if you can always reverse engineer this. It's kind of like how when you would send out, there's a whole bunch of anonymous data that can always be tracked back to an individual user. It's like, oh, it's supposed to be your own private kind of world, but you can always figure it out because there's enough of a pattern. So as long as computers are good at picking out patterns, which is kind of what they can do, it's pretty easy to find out where these things originated from. Although once you find that part out, of course you'll try the workaround like leet speak. So it'll be a fun cat and mouse kind of game. So if you want to be really anonymous, you start either adding in other languages, or you start adding in leet speak or codes, and then you have to have ciphers crack that, and you'll go back and forth on that.
What do you think, Sarah? Do you worry that we'll lose our anonymity, or is this a good thing? We'll be able to catch the bad guys.
I think this is pretty cool. I kind of like linguistics nerd stuff, and I just think it's very interesting that maybe unbeknownst to all of us, we have specific patterns that could identify us. I'm not writing a lot of long 5,000-word dissertations on anything that I need to be anonymous and is somewhere out on the internet somewhere. So I'm trying to figure out why this would be such a bad thing. I love the idea of identifying botnets or malware or something doesn't sit right. This is a pattern that's bad news. But I think this is actually just really cool.
5,000 words is 35 full-length Twitter posts, or maybe 36, depending on how you round.
That's like 2 Steven Sinofsky posts, or like maybe even 1. So I mean, you can figure them out like that.
Post.
So there you
Nate,
go.
What do you
think
of this story?
I'm not scared about my privacy. I don't think anyone should be, really. I mean, the amount of processing time and computation cycles it would take to actually scan the internet and identify everyone using this method is probably impractical. I could see this being used, by the FBI, if they need to sort of narrow down a short list of who they think are the most notable candidates to be arrested, perhaps. I could see them using that. But I don't think anyone should be afraid of this being used to identify them. Everyone's giving away far too much personal information on the internet anyway, that no one needs to use this kind of thing to find out who you are. Quick Google search will find more, I imagine.
All right, let's move to some bad news about the Sony PlayStation Vita. Sales figures are out, Iyaz. What does it say?
Well, it's not sales figures necessarily, but it's a Sony CEO, Kaz Hirai, was telling reporters that the PS Vita sales figures are on the low end of what they expected. So they haven't given any particular numbers recently. Hirai explained that long-term is what's important. It could take 5 to 10 years to know if a product's been successful, and he compared it to the PS3 when it was introduced, how it didn't do so well in the very beginning, but it eventually became a very good seller. According to stats from August of 2012, Sony sold 2.2 million Vitas. The Wi-Fi model cost $250. The 3G model cost $300, and there doesn't appear to be a price cut anytime soon. Nate, do you think there's anything Sony could do to the existing hardware that would make the Vita be worth that kind of money?
No, not to the existing hardware, no. The problem is that people are looking at the Vita and thinking, yeah, that's a great piece of hardware. It's not that expensive. But the games are, in the UK, 30 to 40 pounds. I don't know, it must be 50, 60 bucks in the US, I'm guessing. That puts people off. I mean, the hardware is great. I love the Vita. I think it's a great piece of kit. But it's so difficult to justify spending £40 or dollars or whatever on a piece of software when there are so many great games out there for tablets, for iPhones, for Android systems, and people are seeing those as more compelling because they're investing in an ecosystem, and that ecosystem on the Vita is very, very expensive compared to the competition. I think really Sony needs to do a couple of things, and either maybe start bundling the Vita with PlayStation 3 or the PS4 whenever that comes out this year, next year maybe, in order to get people in, and then maybe they will be able to buy stuff You buy a copy of the game for the PS3 and you get a copy on the Vita as well, and sort of tie it all together. Or they need some kind of bigger subscription package than what they've got with the PlayStation Plus thing, where you pay a certain amount of money a month and you get free games and stuff. But make that bigger so you get 3 games a month or something like that, and kind of move away from these very, very expensive boxed retail packages, because I think that's what's standing in the way here.
Tom, do you think partnerships and services is what Sony needs to do to have the Vita become successful? But if they bundled it in, or if they did have, I mean, we just talked about Samsung having a deal with Dropbox. Does Sony need to have a bunch of like an app ecosystem, or even move to Android for this thing to become a bigger winner?
I mean, they've had a couple false starts at integrating PlayStation into the phone, and they haven't been horrible starts, but they just haven't caught on. I think they need to crack that. I think they either need to integrate data better into the Vita in some way, or the next model of the PlayStation Portable needs to be some kind of smartphone type device or a tablet type device. And then, hook into Android, use that ecosystem, throw in all those games, and then have either a special Sony store or a Sony section of the Android store that works the best with your device. That to me seems like their only ways forward. Standalone handheld game consoles are a dying breed. I think they're going the way of the PDA.
I think you might be right about that. It seems like people are very confused about the NVIDIA Shield. It's like, okay, is this a winner? Is this a loser? There's Android coming to the television with Ouya. It seems like the gaming market's gotten a whole lot of flux going on right now.
Yeah, the NVIDIA Shield is actually a really interesting one. I'm fascinated by this. I think it's one of the highlights of CES in many ways, because what I think this thing is, the NVIDIA Shield, is more of a proof of concept. I think really what this for NVIDIA is kind of what Microsoft Surface is for Windows 8 and what the Nexus line of phones and tablets is for Google. It's kind of saying, look, guys, this is what you can do with the products that we make, and kind of using it as a way to inspire other companies to use their chips in similar sort of products. And I think the Shield is so interesting for that reason, as well as the fact that it uses Android. So, it's kind of tying great hardware like the Vita, but with low-cost software and a very open and, a very open system for developers to get into. I think it's a really fascinating idea. It's really interesting.
All right, let's finish up. Jason, fire up the randomizer. As we briefly mentioned when we were talking about T-Mobile earlier, Major League Baseball and T-Mobile will partner up now. And as part of that partnership, they will be replacing landline bullpen phones. For those of you who don't follow baseball, the bullpen is the place where pitchers warm up before they come in to replace another pitcher. And so there's been a phone system where the manager can, or the pitching coach can pick up the phone, find out if the actual pitcher is ready, if he's warmed up and ready to go in the game. That will be now replaced by T-Mobile cell phones. What do you think, Iyaz? Good idea?
This is a terrible idea, because if there's any bad coaching choices, it'll be called a bad call. And you don't want T-Mobile's name on that. They are a phone company. You don't want that kind of problem happening. And if they bring out the wrong pitcher, the same kind of jokes will be there. It's a dangerous game. But hopefully they keep everything working very nicely in T-Mobile lands. It'll be like maybe Wi-Fi phones or something that just works.
His fastball's working at edge speeds today.
It's brand. You're going to see I mean, think about the sidelines of, football, right? Everybody's got the Motorola headsets. That's been going on for a while. Everyone's just going to say T-Mobile, it's the baseball company. Yay, America's teams.
Yeah, it is. It's going to associate them as T-Mobile, they're a big name.
Yeah.
Because, they're the ones that Major League Baseball
uses. I think that's all they care about.
That's a pretty good deal for T-Mobile. Let's move on and see what's on the calendar.
Oh, Tom, that's great, because I've got one right here. Facebook is holding a press event next Tuesday, January 15th. We don't know much about it, except that it's a press event, so we'll certainly be covering it on TNT. The Pebble Watch, remember the Pebble Watch? It's finally shipping on January 23rd. Iyaz, did you end up getting one of those on Kickstarter or not? I don't remember.
No, I was because of the nature of Kickstarter. I wanted it so badly, but then again, I was going to wait until it's a real product and then buy it because it just looked too good to be true.
Well, it's finally shipping. The new 27-inch Macs won't ship until next month, so stop crying. You'll get it next month, but yes, they are delayed. Jason, seriously, stop crying.
I'm sorry.
And finally, the MakerBot Replicator 2X is 3D printer, a dual color, and it's shipping in March for $2,800. But hey, 3D printing.
Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
We've got a message from Joe. He says, "Hey guys, I think you're underselling my personal favorite feature of Roku. Sure, it's nice to have Netflix and Hulu, but I like Roku for being able to see internet TV channels like Giant Bomb, Twit, and Twitch.tv on a television rather than a computer. Other than Boxy, I don't know of any solution as simple and easy as Roku." And obviously this email is about how Roku might, they have deals in place, but the question is, would they survive?
Yeah, I guess I kind of dismissed Roku the other day because I was like, yeah, Hulu is better on Apple TV. But Joe makes a really good point. There are definitely, particularly with streaming channels like Twit and others, Roku has really the only option that I can think of to have that in your living room on your TV, which I agree is just a better experience almost always, unless you're away from home.
I mean, that's what Leo was talking about his New Media Expo keynote, was we're making the bet that that's going to be the future. And we're glad that Joe is one of the people who's already living in the future. But I think still the majority of people look at things like Netflix and Hulu.
Got another email from Kurt who says, listening to Tuesday's show, so that was yesterday, I could not help but think about the possibilities of two users having independent full-screen viewing capabilities on 4K TVs. As a gamer, I have issues with playing a two-person game on one TV, resulting in a poor user experience, as each player traditionally has half the screen, bad aspect ratio, jumbled audio. Utilizing both the dual screen viewing technology and audio would allow two players to view the entire screen, have their own audio, resulting in a much better experience. As a side note, it would also prevent screen cheating in a competitive game.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I still don't like the fact that you have to wear glasses to make it work. Well, that wraps it up for us here at the Tech News Today. West side of the North American continent empire. We've got Nate and Iyaz in Las Vegas, Jason and Sarah in Petaluma, myself in Los Angeles. Nate, thanks so much for joining us again so soon after we just had you in December. It's awesome to have you back again.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you very much. It's a lot of fun from my hotel room here in Las Vegas.
So wired.co.uk is the best place to follow your work. Anything else to let the folks know about?
Yeah, we do the Wired.co.uk podcast as well. I host that every week with my colleague Olivia on Wired. That's on iTunes Store. And go and follow me on Twitter immediately. That's at Nate Lanxon. You can't miss me.
Yeah, LANXON. Do it now before you forget. You will not regret it. Before we go, Jason, I know we've had some people worried about the YouTube channel going away. Some of the TNT episodes have not been showing up on YouTube. Explain what's going on there.
Yeah, I'll try and explain it very quickly. Basically, we've switched to a new publishing system. You'll notice network-wide that all of our shows are suddenly appearing in HD, which is a great thing. The new publishing system does not publish to the same old YouTube channel, the Twit YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to that and expect those episodes to just appear there in front of you, they won't. Every show publishes now to their own YouTube channel, but those episodes are still being put into the playlist that you might be following on the Twit side. So if you're just expecting the videos to appear in your Twit feed, you won't see it. You're going to have to check out the playlist or subscribe to the episode on the actual show's YouTube account. And all that stuff is linked to if you just go to the playlist so you can find it. It's a little confusing. Hopefully it'll all get ironed out, but that's kind of what's going on right now. They're there. They're just not where you expect them to be.
Excellent. So what's is it youtube.com/technewstoday?
Let's see here. I'm trying to remember because this happened very recently. Just go to the normal channel, youtube.com/twit. Go to the playlist of the show, and any of the newer episodes, you'll see the username there. That's how you can kind of get to it easily.
Excellent. And, of course, you can always go to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. Suggest stories for us to cover on the show. We do look at that, and we especially look at how many votes. When it starts to get a bunch of votes from people, we definitely pay attention to putting it in the lineup. You can find us on the web anytime, even if the YouTube channel gets confusing. We're at twit.tv/TNT all the time. You can email us, TNT@twit.tv. Give us a call. Leave us a voicemail, TNT show. Iyaz will be hitting the show floor at CES. We'll get some impressions from him about that tomorrow. So join us then. We'll see you there.